Hello, thanks for checking out my video today. So I got to talk about Noam Chomsky briefly. It's come out that very disappointingly, he had a pretty close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, which is really disappointing. And not just a loose connection, but they seem to have been friends and hung out. And Chomsky's been asked about this recently, and he's just sort of doubled down on it by saying, like, who cares and what business is of yours, and basically just giving the worst answer possible, which is very disappointing because Chomsky is a voice on the left, obviously, and someone who I've shared a lot of clips on my social media over the years of him explaining certain things, and I think he's had a lot of valuable stuff to say. And not only is he friends with Jeffrey Epstein, he hung out with Epstein and Woody Allen, who is also, Woody Allen is absolutely a predator, disgusting guy who, despite, arguably perhaps being a good filmmaker or a comedian, like, groomed and raised an adopted daughter and then married her. So, and as far as I'm concerned, he's definitely a sexual predator. And, so when you've got three guys and two of them are sex predators, the third guy hanging out with them is just, it kind of annihilates his character. Now, I don't suspect that Noam Chomsky is necessarily a sexual predator, but he is someone who hangs out with these people for, the benefits of probably financially and in terms of fame and stuff. So there's a few things to say here. Do I denounce him, like, his character morally? Yeah, he's basically, his character is toast. He's a bad person. He's a bad person for having personal friendships with these people. Next question would be, like, the obvious implication. Like, does this invalidate the stuff he's talked about over the years, like the fact that he represents left-wing ideology? Does the fact that he's a terrible person now invalidate all of that? And I would say no, not really. I suspect that, like, Jeffrey Epstein donated millions of dollars to MIT, where Chomsky taught. I think that's what this is really about, getting money and getting fame. Also, Noam Chomsky is not a political scientist, never was a political scientist. He's a linguist, and his main claim to fame was the breakthroughs that he showed in language and the way language is universally innate to human beings and so on and so forth. So in his own field, I mean, that speaks for itself, and that is, he contributed a really good breakthrough in knowledge and human understanding, etc. But the reason that he has been such a public intellectual and made famous through media and being allowed on shows to represent this point is probably because of his political hookups, which says something about the entire system. Now, again, this is disappointing, but not entire. I mean, it is. I was surprised when I heard this, but then the more I've thought about it, like, not really, because this is the nature of the whole system. There's a reason why people like me will never be on TV like that or anything, because and not just me, but there are real intellectuals out there that are just, more published in peer-reviewed journals and more credible and more knowledgeable on things that could have been repping certain points of view, but they're not, right? And I think that's because they're just honest people who don't have these connections. So to the nature of celebrity, or the nature of just being held up by the mainstream machine, probably implies that a person is a bit corrupt, and that's just a sad fact of life. When it does come to some things, though, Chomsky, when I was in university almost 20 years ago, we had to watch Manufacturing Consent, and I still, like, that's a really important documentary and book. I mean, by now it's a bit dated, so things have to be updated, but the concept and explaining. Also, here's a book, for example, by Chomsky called Media Control: Spectacular Achievements of Propaganda, the Role of the Media in Contemporary Politics. And this stuff is really important to understand, and it doesn't, like, him being, his character being what it is now, it doesn't actually invalidate the arguments put forward in this. I mean, U.S. imperialism and the media, and they go together to basically brainwash people through propaganda to get the public to consent to these imperialist wars and stuff like that. So just a general understanding of propaganda and the media and imperialism is very important. And, Chomsky's said a lot of good stuff. I used to share this clip on my Instagram all the time of Chomsky explaining why, for example, capitalism and democracy can't really go together. Like, capitalist democracy fundamentally really is an oxymoron, and he's making valid points. I think there's just a lot of easy clippable things of him talking, like 60 seconds, where he lays out a really straightforward point that is really, relevant or important to the stuff, like modern politics. So he's a bad person that, like, probably appropriated a lot of ideas from other really smart people and then was allowed to be the spokesman for them. One of the reasons that this happens broadly too, I was talking to a friend of mine who's in India, well-educated person, and they were telling me, yeah, the same. It's a common tactic, like with a lot of progressive stuff. They were saying back in India, like feminism and stuff, has basically been sort of smeared or discredited by taking it away from authentic people and then making some kind of like crook or pawn like the voice of it, so that that person can later be discredited as an individual, and then the entire ideas that they represented get soured in the public's mind, and that's just really unfortunate. That sucks. So I would like the takeaway for me here is like be really cautious of public intellectuals. Um, One of my favorite intellectuals right now is a guy named Professor Jiang, which he has a YouTube channel called Predictive History. He's kind of gone viral on YouTube, and he is an actual professor. He's a Yale graduate, but he's not famous at all, and the media is not making him famous. He's just famous because he teaches a class and he puts it on YouTube, and it's taken off. And I like the way he presents ideas, and he's not really telling people what to think, but he's trying to teach them how to think, and then presenting them with ideas that are worth thinking about. But he's somebody that's not propped up by. He's not going to be on CNN arguing something. He's actually making the rounds on a lot of like libertarian podcasts and smaller things like that. And so I do enjoy his stuff a lot. That's the kind of academic I think that is a lot more authentic. I've also listened to his spiritual views, and they basically line up a lot with my personal spiritual views. So I like him for that reason. Chomsky wrote this book on anarchism. It's short. It's actually a few essays put together. Chomsky called his anarchism libertarian socialism. He talks, libertarian, the original word in Europe has the opposite meaning that it has in America. So libertarian socialism seems like an oxymoron to Americans because they don't understand the history necessarily. They probably don't understand like the history of the word and what it actually means. Now, this kind of thinking has a big influence on me. I don't really I have human values, spiritual values, and then I consider a lot of different political ideas and how those could be implemented. So I don't have a label. Like I'm not like a Marxist or an anarchist or a libertarian socialist, but I read all that stuff. I'm influenced by all of it. I'm always considering it. Does Chomsky, are his ideas on anarchism now invalidated because he's like a shitty person? Not necessarily. This is where like intellectuals and more intelligent, higher thinking, critical thinking skills like come into play. Like because you have to read this stuff to be able to really have an opinion on it, and a lot of these public intellectuals I think are probably like borrowing and stealing from other people's ideas, right? Like take Shakespeare, for example. I think Shakespeare is a brand. I'm really agnostic on whether or not Shakespeare even ever existed as one single person. But the idea that there was one guy who came up with all of the Shakespeare plays originally, that like out of his own mind, that's nonsense. Like if there was a guy, he was definitely taking people's ideas, like other people's ideas, and probably improving them. And then they probably were multiple people that all got combined. Because Shakespeare is a brand, actually. Like I love Shakespeare. I study it. I'm a literature guy, right? That's my thing. But I'm aware of like this rabbit hole that like Shakespeare historically probably, like Jesus, never actually existed. It's a brand, but still. I like Chomsky's ideas on authority and anarchism. Another anarchist thinker I like is David Graeber, who passed away shortly after I think Occupy Wall Street stuff. I really hope that he was authentic and wasn't tied to any of these people either. Back then, I mean, he's dead now, but he's an anarchist thinker that I really like. David Graeber, he wrote Bullshit Jobs, and I got this book on pirate libertaria that I really like because I like pirates. But anyway, my whole point in that is like if you didn't know Chomsky, his character sucks because he is definitely friends with these terrible people and probably maintain these relationships to get the perks of fame and becoming like a famous intellectual and all that stuff, and that's a big bummer. But I don't think it invalidates his academic work or most of the political ideologies that he represented. I mean, Chomsky is a bad character. Isn't an argument against anarchism or the ideas he puts forward in this book. If anybody wanted to debate the ideas in this book, they'd have to like kind of read, like with me, they'd have to read the book so we can have an actual conversation on it and stuff. Also, he talks a lot about, just quickly before I wrap this up, he talks a lot about anarchist Spain in this book. So I know some people watch my videos that are very right-wing nationalist types, and they have like interesting opinions on anarchism in Spain and that chapter, with Franco and all that stuff. I think you should read this. It's interesting to think about. So that's all I wanted to say about that, but those are my thoughts on the Noam Chomsky Epstein connection, and it's very disappointing, but that's what I think the implications are for his work and his ideas. I'd love to hear feedback from what you guys think about it, so let me know. Thanks a lot. See you guys in the next video.